All the rest of you out there's something you've got to do. You need to go out and propagate our formula.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.
Let me just guess, out of the blue, he's misleading the public?
Yeah, that would be correct, John. Exactly. Exactly.
Of economic advisors.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed his introduction. It's the top of his show. Yeah, he needs a jingle. Goolsby's Minute.
Hi, I'm Austin Goolsby from the Council of Economic Advisors. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about a major milestone hit by General Motors.
It's a hit, everybody. We got a #1 hit with a bullet.
And by the way, listeners out there who are familiar with Monday Night Football know that this is the voice of John Gruden.
Oh, really? Is that what he's doing?
No, that is the way he sounds exactly like him. And it's like a football analyst.
Here we go.
The last you heard about General Motors, they were supposed to have been on their last legs and about to die. But that's not quite how it worked out.
Now, this is very interesting because I want everyone to understand there's a difference between market value and revenue and profits. Huge difference between all of that.
The story really goes back more than 10 years. GM had become a manufacturing dinosaur that wasn't competitive internationally. They were bloated with debt. They had higher costs than other manufacturers. They were making models plagued with quality problems that people weren't willing to buy.
Sounds a bit like the U.S., doesn't it? Bloated with debt, making shit people don't want to buy. I mean, it sounds a bit like it's an analogy. It's an analogy.
And what I've plotted here is the market value of General Motors going from 1999 up through the past several years. And what you see is that it was trending downward. They were losing market share, they were losing customers, and they were definitely losing money. In the 4 years up to their bankruptcy, General Motors lost more than $80 billion. They lost more than $30 billion just in the year 2008. And so when the deep recession hit, they were really on their last breath. So the president comes into office in January of 2009. The economy's in free fall. General Motors is about to collapse. And the president has a series of very tough decisions that he has to make.
I don't think that was actually true. The economy was not in free fall when he came into office. It happened after he was in office, correct?
No, it was when he came into office.
Okay.
The president decides, over the voices of many of the critics...
that would be us, John. We're voices of the critics here.
Not to just let them liquidate in an uncontrolled manner, but instead to make a $49 billion investment in the company and to force them to restructure to make themselves competitive.
Now, of course, here's where that's messing with a non-government organization, and is something.
Yeah. By the way, with an administration, the Obama administration, that has the lowest number of people who have ever worked in the private sector. In other words, had a job in the private sector. In the history of the United States, no other administration has had so few. There's like 2 or 3 guys total. The rest, everybody else is a government worker or some academic person, but mostly government workers.
Including this guy.
Including this guy. He's never had a job.
No, he's not.
Now, critics said that they couldn't do it. They were going to die anyway, and we'd never get a dime out of that. But we learned from Ford and from others that big American manufacturing companies, when they make themselves competitive, they can be successful. And so the president launched them on a massive restructuring effort. And that involved very tough conditions. Firing the CEO.
This is pretty amazing, though, right? It's like, hey, we're going to fire your CEO.
Replacing a third of the management.
Kick all your management out, put in some shills.
It had to be a shared sacrifice. Workers had to sacrifice, dealers, suppliers, management.
So all the slaves had to sacrifice.
Everybody.
Well, yeah, and a lot of them, by the way, when they started knocking the dealers off, they took a careful look at who contributed to the Obama campaign.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we haven't forgotten that.
The McCain campaign. If you were a dealer that contributed to the McCain campaign,
your dealership got cut.
You're out. You're done.
Yep.
It was the only way to make that company competitive so that they could grow out of their problems.
Yeah, which is bullcrap, because the only way to be competitive is to make competitive products at competitive prices. Has nothing to do with that directly.
But they did it, and it did work.
Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. It worked. John, it worked.
Got their costs down, people around the country started buying their cars again. And for the first...
Which is patently not true. They started buying their cars because we had a car bailout, the cash for clunkers on top of that. Can I just remind everybody? We had a cash for clunkers program, which was only for U.S.-made cars. Please remember that. That's why it worked. Air quotes.
First time in years, General Motors actually turned a profit.
Again, we covered this on No Agenda. That profit was completely based upon cash for clunkers. What was that, $1 billion, John? $1 billion?
Oh, it was like ridiculous. Yeah. And the whole thing is, this is a scam.
Well, hold on. I'm going to tell you the scam in a second. I just want him to say that it was great.
And now General Motors begins selling shares again to the public.
Really? John, did you get in on that IPO?
No, they wouldn't give me any IPO stock, but I can buy it now in the open market.
Oh, yeah, but did you
from
get
somebody who got it cheaper?
But where are all the billionaires made? They're made at the IPO. You get in pre-IPO, and that's where you make the money, because you buy the shares at maybe $5. They go public at $33. Nice number.
And then you dump it.
And of course, and then you dump it. Then you sell it to the public. That's what you do. Then you turn around and sell it to the public.
Initial public offering that was one of the biggest in history.
So this is where you're supposed to be impressed. Wow, this is great. They had the biggest initial public, which is basically borrowing money. It's borrowing money from the investors. It's not like a huge business win. IPOs make founders and people on the inside of the financing rich, which I have to say includes the U.S. government. So let's follow that for a second.
The value of the company is
market value of the company. See, now he's changed it from market capitalization to market value to the value of the company, which is really open to interpretation.
Is now more than $50 billion, and investors gave them a major vote of confidence.
Okay, so here's how it works. Let me explain. We had something called, it used to be called printing money. It's now called quantitative easing. If you happen to see it on the news, they talk about QE2, right? And it's the second round of quantitative easing, which is an expensive word for printing money. And of course, they use that word because if most people understand, hey, wait a minute, printing money, doesn't that bring us inflation? Isn't that bad? So the way it works is they print money so the Federal Reserve can give money, that fake invented money, to the banks. The banks are supposed to lend that money to the public, but the banks didn't lend that money to the public. They are not lending it. We all know that. The president continuously reminds us the banks are doing that. No, they're not lending it to the public. They've invested it in the stock market. That's why you see stocks going up. I mean, what is the stock market, John? What's the Dow? What's the Dow at? 11,000 still? Between 10 and 12?
Yeah, as far as I can remember.
So the banks, and these aren't banks like Citibank necessarily or Bank of America. This is like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, etc. They invested in shares. And guess what they invested in? In General Motors in the IPO. So then it went public. These guys made billions and put it in their pocket, and you didn't get anything. It was your money to start with because we're going to pay for it with inflationary measures. Like the first thing that happens is fuel goes up and oil is rising. So all the commodities start to rise, and eventually food prices will go up. That's just the way it goes. It takes a year before that happens, but you'll see it. So this whole scam, the Goolsbee goon is explaining is how we got ripped off and how our money, which was printed in our name, wound up in the hands of the people who really didn't need any more. And to me, it's despicable this guy stands up in front of the White House whiteboard and explains it away like this.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Excuse me, let me do the one again. I'm done. I'm done with him, with Goolsbee.